These are the players we are not starting for week 4 in fantasy football. We're going to start with Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne has actually looked pretty good this year. We're fairly surprised and pleasantly surprised, honestly, with how good Travis Etienne has looked. Playing the Atlanta Falcons, though, here are some top running backs that have produced versus the Falcons in weeks 1 through 3. Starting with Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders had 11.8 fantasy points. He had 18 carries for 72 yards, and he had 26 yards receiving. So, honestly, not a bad week. Jahmyr Gibbs had only 9.2 points, 17 carries for 80 yards. A.J. Dillon had 7.3 points, 15 carries for 55 yards. When you're looking at that Atlanta Falcons run defense, they are the 4th graded rushing defense in the entire NFL, according to PFF. So this is a run defense that is not to be messed with. This is a run defense that has proven that they are going to stop top running back talent. And honestly, there's another part to this. Yes, Etienne is better than all of the running backs that I just mentioned, with the exception of Jahmyr Gibbs. But we think that the Jags will want to throw the ball against this less impressive secondary. They have the 18th ranked secondary, according to PFF, in the entire NFL. When you look at the Jags offense through a couple weeks, I mean, if you had to use one word to describe the Jags offense through a couple weeks, what would it be?
Yikes.
What would yours be?
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's our biggest concern here. Like Etienne, what he has showcased so far, like we said, his volume has been very impressive, much higher than we probably would have expected in the first 3 games of the season. But when you're looking at the Jags facing a very respectable run defense in the Kansas City Chiefs week 2, that's when Etienne laid the dud and he only put up 6 points. So I think you're seeing that situation again this week where they're going to see this matchup. They're going to say, look, we are better than the Atlanta Falcons. We absolutely are. And we need to lean on our strong point. We need to lean on our franchise quarterback in Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, the receivers that we paid, the receivers that we invested in. We're going to see that secondary, see that they have weaknesses, and we're going to exploit those weaknesses and probably hold off on the rushing attempts this week. That's what I would anticipate.
I think you make a really good point. However, with Etienne, I'm going to roll with starting my stud here. I think all of it makes sense. I mean, you look at what he did against the Kansas City run defense. You look at the weak pass defense that Atlanta has, and I absolutely think the Jags will lean more towards the passing game here. But I think Etienne, he's involved in the passing game enough as it is. And he's not someone that I'm must sitting. I think you make a convincing argument, though.
Yeah,
I just wanted to clarify.
And it's absolutely possible. This is the reason we put this as the first one on this video, is because we knew you guys would watch it. We knew you guys would disagree, and we knew that you guys were going to go into the comments and crap on us without even listening to what we said, without even listening to the counterpoint.
But it's a really valid argument.
And that's the point. I personally, if I had Etienne, I would be scared of starting him this week. I legitimately would. And that's because of the dud that he laid against the Chiefs. So that's just my personal opinion on it. And Avery, I mean, do you have anything to add on that at all?
I'm in the middle of you two. So
cool.
Next guy.
Yeah. Next guy is going to be Rachaad White. And Rachaad White is playing New Orleans. He's had a couple good games over the last couple weeks, but he's playing a top 10 run defense in the New Orleans Saints. And A.J. Dillon, Miles Sanders, Derrick Henry all had down weeks against this defense, averaging 3.29 yards per carry this year. That's Rachaad White averaging that yards per carry. And for him, like, this is just, with the Bucs offense overall, the Saints have, like, defensively
they have their number. Yeah.
They have their number. And even though they lost both games last year, they were hard-fought games when really the Saints and their talent, they had no business winning.
And Tom Brady was on
those teams.
I think you make a great point there.
Yeah.
We're actually sticking with the same team here for Mike Evans on the next one, also playing New Orleans. And you want to talk about the historical struggles against the Bucs all the way back through the beginning of 2019. That's nine times Mike Evans has played the Saints since then. He's averaged 7.8 points per game against the Saints.
Yeah, and it's at the Saints.
In that same time frame, he's averaged like 16 points per game overall. I mean, it's cut in half when he plays the Saints, and that's not a good look. I mean, historically, they have known, and there's a coaching staff there, they know how to defend against Mike Evans, and that's even when Tom Brady was there. You also look at Baker Mayfield and his historical struggles at quarterback, and we're just going to bet on this one being the one where, you know, the Bucs are really, they're slowed down this week. I mean, we haven't seen the Monday night game yet with the Bucs yet, so who knows? Maybe week 3 is when they slow down. But we're definitely not betting on them in week 4 either way.
I mean, the Saints don't have a defense that is worthy of being messed with. They have a top 10 defense in the NFL on both passing and rushing. So I think for us to put 2 Buccaneers on this with Baker Mayfield at quarterback, I don't think that's outlandish at all. I mean, when you're talking about Rachaad White again, like Rachaad White we all knew he was a fairly inefficient rusher anyway. Like the hope for his points is going to be in the receiving game for sure. And so would we be surprised if he got some garbage time points? Absolutely not. And if you don't have the depth in your roster, you have to start Rachaad White. Do it. Mike Evans, if you don't have the wide receiver depth, you had to start Mike Evans. It's not like Mike Evans hasn't produced so far yet this year. However, we talked about this last week in our sells video. Mike Evans probably not going to keep this pace up if we had to guess.
This would be the week where he starts to fall off.
It just makes sense that this would be the week that he starts to fall off. Let's stay in this game. This game is full of non-starts.
Very full.
And let's go Alvin Kamara. Now, Alvin Kamara is less about the matchup and more about Alvin Kamara is coming back for his first game off of his 3-game suspension. I could see this going one of 2 ways. I could see Alvin Kamara coming back, having 9 carries for 21 yards, having 2 catches for 8 yards. I could see that. I could also see Alvin Kamara coming back and having 3 touchdowns at his first game back. That said, we're not going to pick the less likely side in him coming back and having a monster game after being out and not with the team for the first 3 weeks of the season. Tampa Bay has the 14th ranked rush defense this year. So not a super shabby defense. We love Kamara this year in fantasy. We love Kamara, though, not for now and not for this matchup and not to win you your week 4 matchup. We love Kamara for the end of the year. That's why we were drafting Alvin Kamara. We knew he'd be back from his suspension. We knew he'd have plenty of time to get his leg back underneath of him. And we wouldn't even be that surprised, honestly, this week if he got good work. So, we're not even saying that Alvin Kamara's not going to come back. I mean, you have Jamal Williams out with an injury. Kendra Miller didn't look good last week. I think it was Tony Jones that was getting the majority of the carries last week.
Yeah, it was. And I think beyond that, it's pretty obvious that the New Orleans Saints, their game plan this year is not to run the ball. I mean, Michael Thomas, 13th in the NFL in targets right now, and Chris Olave is 8th. So they want to throw the ball, and that's their goal there. And so, obviously, historically, Kamara has been involved in the passing game, but I could see him just having a slow week as he gets back into things.
We're going to be conservative. The run game in New Orleans has really, really been bad this year. Really, really bad. They're the 5th worst team in run blocking this year. No back has been able. I mean, Jamal Williams, who looked decent last year, literally went down there and looked terrible.
If Kamara showcases a really good week, it'll be because of his receiving upside, not his rushing. That's for sure.
But again, the more conservative take. Kamara will probably take a minute to get going.
Yeah. Isiah Pacheco is playing the New York Jets this week, and that's our reason. They're playing the Jets.
Good defense.
And yeah, the Jets are 11th in run defense this year, but they had a really, really tough schedule to start the season. And yeah, they're playing the Chiefs now, week 4, another ridiculously tough matchup that they're probably not going to win. If they win, that's probably the upset of the week. Obviously, on a good defense, Pacheco is still having to share with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and McKinnon. McKinnon in week 3 had a touchdown. CEH had a touchdown. And this is a running back by committee. They're just putting in whoever has the fresh legs.
Pacheco's the best one.
And Pacheco is the best one, absolutely. But against one of the best defenses in the NFL, I'm not too excited about this. This year's he's been super efficient. But he has underwhelmed. He has underwhelmed a little bit, and I think he will underwhelm again this week, because of what we've seen from the Chiefs' backfield. So
yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, this was really a backfield that we weren't necessarily touching a lot of, even before the season, because we knew how heavy of a committee it would be. He had 9 points in his first game, did Isiah Pacheco, 8 points in his second game, and then he did have 15 points last week. But again, you're talking about snap share-wise, 48% in week 1, 51% in week 2, and 42% in week 3.
And he needed a touchdown to break 10 points.
He's been the the running back 30, 29, and 12. So obviously last week he got in to be a running back 1. This is pre-Monday night game, so probably not. But before that, you're talking about a running back 30. So, I mean, Pacheco's really a guy that you're probably at best flexing anyways. But when you're talking about the matchup, when you're talking about how heavy the committee has been recently, Jerick McKinnon actually looked really good in the last game, like you mentioned. I personally totally agree with this one. I think he's somebody I'm not comfortable starting this week.
Yeah, and then to go to a less talented running back, and in an even worse matchup is Brian Robinson, who's playing the best run defense in the league, and that is Philadelphia. They absolutely have a dominant defensive line, and as we saw last week playing against Buffalo, when the Commanders got down, well, Brian Robinson didn't get the touches. You saw him play against the Broncos and put up 28 points, and it's because, they were up. They were trying to keep the lead. They're trying to run out the clock. Well, when they're playing from behind, they're not going to do that. He got 10 carries for 70 yards. Yes, he was efficient, but he didn't get to touch the ball. And we're going to bet on that same thing happening this next week against Philadelphia. Philadelphia is probably going to go out there early. I mean, the Commanders have a good defense, but Philadelphia will probably end up winning that game, and as a result, B-Rob won't get many touches.
Yeah, and this is a bit of an enigma that we never thought we'd have to deal with at the beginning of the season. Brian Robinson being running back 1, week 2. I mean, who saw that coming? Who saw him producing at 13 points and 28 points his first 2 weeks in an offense where we thought the passing game would be even a little bit better with Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, and the likes of Curtis Samuel with his big playability as well. But just to kind of ask you guys what you think about Brian Robinson for the rest of the season. I mean, he is playing in an Eric Bieniemy offense where he will be schemed up well. Do you think, aside from some of these division rival games like against Dallas and against Philadelphia, do you think he is a guy that you're looking to flex every single week?
Yes.
I think do you think he's a sell? Do you think this is a fluke?
Purely based on... Go ahead.
Okay. I'll go ahead. My fault. I think he's actually looked way better than I ever expected this year.
He looks better
so that's my answer. Yes, I'm flexing him.
And it's not, to me, it's more about the just sheer volume he is getting, like in the amount of carries he is getting over Antonio Gibson for me that I didn't really expect. But he also has looked better than I thought he would because he really is just not a talented running back and he really wasn't coming out of college. And I think maybe it's Eric Bieniemy scheming him up well. I mean, it's amazing what an offensive coordinator can do that's actually competent. See the Pittsburgh Steelers for that one. But I do think that he's somebody that I'm comfortable flexing this year, and I'm probably not selling him.
Okay, yeah, and
the one game he did do well was the Broncos, though. So a lot of people overinflate his value because of that.
And there have been some trade scenarios that you guys have asked us about in the comments that we've seen, even in some dynasty leagues. Obviously, that involves picks and stuff, but some of the prices that he's gone for more elite level talents that have had a down 3 weeks to start the season. I mean, those are the types of guys that we're looking to get and sell or buy at a discount. And Brian Robinson may potentially in the future be one of those guys where you might want to jump on that opportunity to move off of a less talented back who may have some respectable volume, but you want to take the upside in the ceiling with some of these receivers that are struggling to start out the year. But
this is going to be a bonus one because I know we all three actually agree on this one. It's going to be Devon Achane or Devon Achane. I don't know. The running back, the rookie running back, real small, Dolphins. We're not going to start him this week. And this is a couple of things. Number one, everybody's going to throw him into the starting lineup this week because of what they saw last week in a 52-point game. They are playing if you would pull up the Buffalo defense statistics, they're playing the Buffalo Bills defense, and we should have learned this, but maybe we haven't. The Buffalo Bills run defense is fairly good, and their defense overall is fairly good. It's going to be a tough matchup for the Dolphins. I do think it will be a little bit of a shootout, but at the same time, with Devon Achane, I could absolutely... This reeks of coming out and scoring 6.8 points to me.
There are a lot of variables that go into this when you're looking at the situation in week 3 that allowed Devon Achane to get 52 points. Yes, he's fast. Yes, he's quick. Yes, he's able to catch the ball, and he has some amazing after-the-catch ability. That was never questioned when it came to him as a talent going into this year. Here's a couple things. One, I don't think the Dolphins are going to score 70 points again. 2, I don't think Devon Achane is going to score 4 touchdowns again. And 3, Jalen Waddle is coming back. This took Jalen Waddle to be out of the game for most certain Achane to both put up the points that they did in this game. And 4, Denver may be the worst defense in the NFL.
Yeah, Denver's currently PFF's worst graded defense. Buffalo Bills are the 10th.
So you take all of those 4 variables away, assuming the volatility of touchdowns and Jalen Waddle being back and the fact that they're playing a better defense and the fact that they're not going to score 70 points.
I think it all adds up.
I think it all adds up.
All right. We're going to throw him in there. Again, we don't expect to be absolutely right about every single one of those. So if you're going to hold us to that standard, I'm going to tell you right now that we're not going to meet it. But even if we hit on most of these, like miss on 1 or 2, to us, that's going to be fairly good because, again, a lot of fantasy is luck anyways. It's hard to predict. Even the analytics will lie to you sometimes. See Devon Achane, actually, as an example of that.
Yeah,
so
only projected 4 points last week.
Don't hold us to 1,000 batting average because we're not going to hit that. But those are our not starts or sits for the week. We appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you drop a like on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you head over to flockfantasy.com/domain to get all of our exclusive content. And make sure you use code domain while you're over there. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining us. We will see you later.